For the top of the box, what I've done is I cut a couple of pieces of cherry, and I've planed them down to about a 1/16 of an inch thick, and then I cut a strip of maple just to act as an inlay. And what I'll do is glue all of these together on a 1/4 inch piece of plywood, and then I can cut that all out, and that'll make a nice top. And then the medallion can just sit on top there. So I'll go ahead and get started. One of these days I'll figure out a better way of laminating, but for right now I just pile up a bunch of bricks and squish it all together. To make the top, I got some strips of 3/4 inch maple, and I cut them an inch wide. I cut these earlier, and then I just carved a groove down the middle that will hold the laminated top pieces. So what I'm doing now is I just want to make these the same length as the top of the box, so I'm going to be cutting them at 45-degree angles, 12.5 inches long. Okay, now I've cut the laminated boards down to size, and I've got one piece that will fit into the slots of the frame. So it'll just be a matter of hooking it all up roughly like that and gluing it up. So I've gone ahead and clamped up the frame with the inside panel without gluing it to see what it's going to look like, and a couple of things struck me that I want to deal with before I glue it up. And one is I want to take care of this edge. It's a real sharp edge, and I'd like to round it over and give it a softer look. So I'll take that over to the router next. Secondly, the medallion, which is warped, needs to be clamped down tight. And to do that, I don't have any clamps that stretch far enough beyond this frame, so I'm going to have to clamp this to the inside piece before I attach the frame. And lastly, I was looking at the back side of this, and it's just ugly plywood. So I want to cover that up with something. I don't know, do felt or leather. I'd like to get a mirror cut to put in there. That'd be kind of nice. But whatever I do, this inside edge here is also sharp, but I think I'll just chamfer that at a 45-degree angle so that it'll slope down to whatever I put in there. One other thing I wanted to take care of was the medallion, and when I ran my test piece of this with all of these stipples, I found out that I really can't brush a finish on there. It just pools up and really is ugly, so I've got to spray it. And I also noticed that lacquer won't work on this gold paint that I put on there. So I've got, I think it's an alcohol-based clear coat that I'm just going to spray it now, because I won't be able to finish this separately from the rest of the box once it's all assembled. I want to get started rounding over these inside edges, so I've set up a 1/4 inch roundover bit in my router, and I'll just run them through. And that will give me this nice rounded over look for the frame. Now I just want to create that bevel on the inside edge of the frame of the lid, and I've set up a chamfering bit in my router. So I've gone ahead and glued the medallion to the lid, and I just wanted to make sure that I put some soft pads under here, and I didn't clamp it down very tightly because I don't want to destroy any of that stippling pattern. So while that's drying, I went ahead and cut the pieces for the bottom frame, and as you can see, they stick out a little bit wider than the top frame does, and this will get rounded over. And so the next step will be to cut grooves on the inside to hold the bottom panel. Sometimes it's easier to make two passes through the table saw to cut grooves rather than set up the whole dado stack, and it gets it nice and centered, and the only problem is sometimes you're left with a little bit of a ridge there, and so that's pretty easy just to break out with a chisel and kind of work your way down. And then that'll just pop right out. So I've gone ahead and cut out the plywood panel for the bottom piece, and I've got all of the frame pieces cut, and I've glued everything down, and the middle panel just floats in there. I just glued the corners. And you always want to make sure that you check the diagonals on any project like this to make sure that they're equal. That way you know it's square. I also just use a square also just to double check. And with that, the box is starting to take shape. One thing I want to do though is I want to chamfer this edge of the box, and I want to chamfer this inside edge here so that when the lid closes you'll have a little bit of a finger hold here to pull it up. And with both of those bevels cut, I've got a nice little finger hold here that will help in lifting the lid. Okay, for the lid, I want to round over this, the edges, and I've set up a 1/2 inch roundover bit in the router, and I'll flip the top over and run it through once like so. Now, for the bottom frame, I want to do the same thing, except I'm going to run it through once, I'm going to flip it over and run it through the opposite way so that I get a complete round over. And with all the profiles cut, it looks pretty nice. I've got rounded over edges on the lid, and the bottom roundovers make it appear as a bead. And so the only thing left to do on the case is to put hinges in the top. I'll have to figure out how I'm going to do that. And of course I need to glue the sides down to the base.